Welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Black Metal. We have done some Beginner's Guides before, we've done Melodic Death, and we've also done Progressive Metal, which you can check out on the channel. And today we're tackling my favourite genre of all time. That's right, the blackest of the black times infinity. It is Black Metal, which, I've talked to in length on this channel, but this is a Beginner's Guide, so we're going to do things a little bit differently. So, just like my other two videos, we're going to do 3 albums for the essentials. So these are 3 essential listens you have to have in your collection and you have to listen to. The next 3 are going to be albums and from bands that you should check out to maybe get you into other genres. So maybe you're just starting black metal, but you don't know much about melodeath, or you don't know much about grindcore or anything like that. These albums should help you to get into, to bridge the gap to another genre. And then 3 other picks, which are wild cards. So if you're thinking, where's this album, where's this band, because there's thousands of bands, this is only going to be 9 albums, and it has to stick into those criteria, so there's your answer to that. So, before I get started with my list, I want you guys to pop down below, what are some essential albums to black metal to help people get into the genre? What are some albums that helps people bridge the gap to other genres? And just throw in some wild cards. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So, you all saw this coming. The first classic is Mysterious Dontcetanus, which is the quintessential black metal album. It's the one everyone knows, it's the one everyone suggests, it's the one everyone should listen to. It's got the history there, ignoring the whole controversy of Varg and the church burnings and stabbings and how bad Lords of Chaos is. Ignoring all that, the music itself is pretty damn good, and it's pretty apt to what black metal is. It is cold, like a freezing moon, as the song suggests. Cold, oppressive, rhythmic, as well as pretty rhythmic, and it's harrowing. And that's what this album delivers. It's pretty much the poster child of black metal. So if I do not have this on this list, someone's getting shot or stabbed. How many times with some chalky milk? And that person would be me. So Dontcetanus is a great album. It's not just overhyped as well, it is one that is actually quite good, and it's probably the best album they've got. Mayhem, the band in question. Gotta have it on the list, gotta be the first classic. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about Bathory. Arguably the first black metal band, probably the first true black metal band, aside from Venom, who are more like a proto-band. We're going to talk about Under the Sign of the Black Mark, which is pretty much definition of black metal. This is where those raspy screams started to take form on this album, and the songs on this album, like Woman of Dark Desires, so good, so catchy, blending in the oppressive atmosphere and the shrieks with just catchy melodies, Although my favourite is probably Bloodfire Death, that kind of mixes in these more Viking kind of styles with the music, whereas Under the Sign of the Black Mark is pure black metal, essential listening. I could also put The Return here, but for me, The Return's probably one of the first black metal albums ever made, but not quite as good as Under the Sign of the Black Mark. So, Naked Goat Man on the cover, gotta be you. Now for the third classic choice, I could pick loads of albums from loads of bands, but for essentials, we're gonna go with Darkthrone, Blaze in the Northern Sky. This is proper black metal. If someone said, what is black metal? I would hand them A Blaze in the Northern Sky. The first album from these Norwegians after the death metal album, because they started off as a death metal band and then quickly changed, which some people actually forget. This is the first in the black metal trilogy, the Unholy Trilogy, and this is one of the best. It's one of the greatest black metal albums. It has long songs as well, not just like short, punch you in the face over and over again kind of songs, but it also has like 10-minute songs. Insane. They managed to do it so well. The atmosphere is palpable. These are the 3 essential albums. These are the 3 albums I'd give to someone who's a newcomer. So now we're going to move on to some of the albums which may bridge the gap to other genres and are probably easier listening than the 3 classics, in my opinion anyway. So let's get to some of them. First up, for something melodic, we're having Dissection with Storm with the Light's Bane. This is melodic black metal, and some people even consider it melodic death, but it does have that catchy edge that melodic death has in those melodies in there. This is a very good bridging gap to melodeath for people who don't like it. It may get people into like the classic Gothenburg trio, maybe stuff like Insomnia and Bellicore, those kind of bands, a bit more darker edge. Dissection may help to get them into it, and it's also a classic as well. Cold atmosphere, just like most of them, amazing melodies that'll just get stuck in your head. One of the greatest of all time, so yeah, it'll help people get into melodic death. Next up, I'm going to talk about Burzum, or Burzum, with Philosophem. Arguably a classic as well, could put it into the free, but in my opinion, this is kind of like bridge gap album. This is actually the album that got me into black metal as a whole. This specific album got me into black metal. But I think it is a great bridge gap to DSBM, Depressive Suicidal Black Metal, and kind of like drone music, because there's a lot of songs on Philosophem with just kind of like ambient noise that just carries on for a long time. You know the songs. And there's others where the screams are just so harrowing and just so muffled in the background. It'll help people get into bands such as Leviathan, Total Self-Hatred, stuff like that. And other drone bands like Sun O, you might get into through this. So I think this album's actually a good gap closer. And even it got me into bands such as, say, Alcest, Agalok. It's a good folky time. And I think it has to be on this list somewhere. So it's coming here. And lastly for this one, Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk by Emperor. I know In the Nightside Eclipse is a classic as well, and I think people should listen to that as well, but Anthems is more symphonic, more bombastic, and more just over the top in every way. It's also more crazy. Now I think... Oh, Torchic's dead. Sit back. I think, for this one, it would get people into symphonic metal. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but if you start with this, you might get into stuff like Septic Flesh, because that is symphonic. Flesh God Apocalypse. These kind of symphonic death metal bands, maybe into some symphonic other metal bands, such as Nightwish and Epica, which sounds crazy, I know, but it just might. It just might. Probably more like Septic Flesh and Flesh God Apocalypse, though. But hey, those bands are great too. So Emperor has to be on this list, and I'm picking Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk because I think it's the most symphonic and it'll help people get into symphonic metal as a whole. So the next three is the wildcard picks, as always, just albums that I choose myself, which are a bit different, and I think people should listen to as well. The first being Marduk, with Panzer Division Marduk. This is different to all the other albums so far because it's very, very intense. It's the most intense album on this list. It's furious, it feels like you go into the war, and the bombs are dropping all around you, and everyone's screaming on fire. This is that kind of album, and you need something, fist-pumping to get you in the mood, and this is one of them. This is a crazy album, and I adore it, and I think everyone should give it a listen. Next up for something more progressive, we have Frost by Enslaved, which is a classic by the band. Not quite my favourite, Below the Lights, but that's way more progressive than Black. So I'm going to go with Frost, which has more of a black metal kind of edge on it. The screams are there, and the folky nature is there. So I could put this on the second layer as well to get people into more folky bands or even more prog bands, because if you like Enslaved, chances are you might like Opeth. Very similar bands, one being death and one being black. Lovely arrangements, beautiful melodies, great screaming and singing. Yeah, Frost has it all, and the icy cold atmosphere of Norway. Yeah, Enslaved, Frost, gotta be here. And last but not least for wildcards, we're going to go with Deathspell Omega with Paracletus. This is different to all of them again because it's more dissonant, more avant-garde, and more strange and weird, and in black metal you'll get some bands like that as well. And none of them do it quite as well as Deathspell Omega. This album is a bit hard to listen to compared to a lot of the others I've mentioned, but stick with it and you'll find yourself loving it and getting used to all the strange tempo changes and the melodies and all that. Crazy album from start to finish. One of my favourites of all time, so I'm going to give it a wildcard pick. So there we have it. Some essential albums of black metal for a beginner. Let me know down below what's your favourite black metal albums. Do you agree with my list? What would you add as essential black metal listening? Because there's loads I've missed off. Satyricon, Dimmu Borgir, Cradle of Filth, the kind of bands that people get into from this genre. I've got other stuff I could put on. Abigor, there's Immortals left off. Like, what's going on? Tark? Too many bands to mention. These are just 9 of the essential albums I think you guys should check out getting into black metal. So let me know down below, and we'll see you again on another Quest for Metal.